So first exhibition in the books. I guess what were you kind of hoping to get out of that, and what was the takeaway?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think a lot of teams have trended towards just doing two closed scrimmages, and but with us having so many new guys, and even with the returners coming into new roles, I didn't want the first time that they play in front of the fans or in a real game-like atmosphere to be in the opening game. I wanted to get some of, I thought what might be some jitters or some tightness and maybe some excitement playing in front of people for the first time. I didn't want them to only experience that in the opener. So that was the thought behind it. So we wanted to get some intangible stuff out of that and get some stuff out of our system. And then, we want to establish the level of play, the intensity and the effort. And I was a little bit disappointed in that. I think playing in front of some fans for the first time, I think, that anxiety and excitement maybe got a little bit the better of us. And I'd rather it happen then. And I still think there's a lot for us to work out because of the totality of the newness. The staff, the players, the guys who are new, the guys who are returned, and settling into their individual roles and then learning how to play together and then to play at the pace and the level of intensity that we're asking them to play at. So we saw some moments of that. But another thing I wanted to get out of it, and part of the reason we played that particular opponent is because we felt like that was a team that if we made mistakes, that they would take advantage of it. And we would rather be in a game like that where you could pay the price for not doing the right things, because sometimes you can get in an exhibition setting and it can be so loaded with fool's gold that you learn those lessons when it really matters instead of having those things brought into your face a little bit like they were the other day. So I was pleased that we played against a quality opponent. We found a way to win a game that could have went the other way, quite naturally, and you've seen that around the country. And then we responded. We had our best practice of the year yesterday, and we didn't respond to that as well today. We could have been better at practice today, but I do think we're making some steps forward.
When you looked at how you were going to handle the rotation for that game, was it any different than a regular game in terms of getting guys in or how you want the flow to go, or is that something you're, I guess, probably going to have to learn on the fly with these guys?
Yeah, there's some feel there. There's certainly 7 or 8 guys where they've practiced and performed at a level where there's a certain expectation of them, and then there's other guys that you take a guy like Quinn Ambrose, who really hasn't played a lot of college basketball, but every day it's hard to keep him off the glass. He's rebounding at a high level, his effort and energy. Where on the flip side, Mo Jai has actually really been good in practice, and his energy level in that game wasn't great. So, but there's 7, 8 guys where we have an expectation of, and then there's several other guys that may play more or less based on what they bring to the game. If it was based on practice, Mo probably would have played many of the minutes that Frank ended up playing, but Frank came in the game and gave us some juice. So he wound up playing 12 or 13 minutes in the second half just as a result of he brought some juice that was really needed in the game. And so that will happen from time to time, and we can't predetermine where that's going to come from. But we like to get to a point where it's just that's what our team is about, and we're not looking to an individual to spark us all the time.
Are you still kind of learning the guys and what they need from you to kind of have that juice that you're looking for every day?
Yes, and that's going to be an ongoing process. And some of it too is, all right, like that was the first time, I guess you could say, we won a game together, and at some point we're going to lose a game together. Like we're going to have to go through some stuff, and then we have to come back the next day. And you start to learn a lot about guys as you go through. You have successes and failures, and you get to learn about whose character is the strongest and who's the most committed, et cetera. And you might think it's a certain guy here in October and get to December and might really learn something else about your team. So try not to get too far ahead on those things and kind of read it as you go.
Did you have to challenge them at halftime, say, hey, or was it just natural with this group and probably the first time you can learn how they would respond, or did you have to say, hey, let's pick it up a little bit?
Yeah, you had to challenge them a little bit at halftime. The challenge was actually more after the game. I do think they're a relatively competitive group, but I think even in a huddle sometimes, when you sit as a coach and these guys are looking at you and you're looking in their eyes, you see different things at different times. There'll come a time when I'm going to sit there and everybody's going to be confident and sure of themselves and sure of what we're doing and sure that we're going to give ourselves the best chance to have the best outcome. In these timeouts, I see a lot of uncertainty about, I think this. In general, I think freshmen are inherently selfish. Not in terms of style of play, but they've worked hard to get to Division I, and they're thinking about, how do I fit into this? What is my role? What does coach think about me? How am I doing so far? All of these kinds of things. It's hard for that individual to think about the whole, to really be focused on what goes into winning. When you got 8 transfers, it's almost like having 8 freshmen in that way, if that makes sense. They're all trying to figure out, all right, I got this new situation. What is it going to look like for me? And how do you graduate from that to team? Just thinking of the whole. And we're at the beginning stages of that. So in those spaces, you're less likely to go out and just trust what you practice when the lights come on. And we got to get to that point.
Kind of in that process, do you try to look at the schedule and say, I would like to be at a certain point by this game, and then another point by this game, and obviously playing your best, come conference time, or does that kind of have to come organically as this group kind of figures some things out?
I think in year one, yes. If we're sitting here at this time next year and we got X amount of guys who are returnees, who've had some success and had some bright moments, and we'll all know who those people are when we come back, then you can start to formulate, your mind goes to a calendar in a way. But here, like the initial question, you're still learning these guys. So I don't want to say, all right, I want to be here by the end of October or mid-November. Now all of a sudden you've got all of these manufactured failures or these fake successes. It's just a matter of where are they and how do we get them from where they are forward? And you have to stay on that path, and you can't worry about the outside. You have to really try to find out where they're at, meet them there, and try to move them forward.
What did you think of how Zurich Phelps handled his role and performance just overall?
He got a passing grade, but I think in the aftermath of the game, the way he processed it was more impressive to me than the way he performed. His thoughtfulness about the ball movement of our team and the execution and the things that we practice. And it's another reason why it was a good opponent for us, because we defend what we're doing day to day a certain way, and now we're playing someone else whose defensive approach is totally different than ours, and it offset us a little bit. The good thing is the team we play Monday is very similar, where they're going to be really hard denial and flying around, and they're a really good defensive program. So it sets us up for that in some ways, but I think taking on that responsibility for the first time in that role, passing grade, but what was more impressive was just his thoughtfulness afterwards and the follow through yesterday. Today, not so much.
You kind of joked about not really being an off season with the amount of work you had to do from being hired to get into this. Does, now that the season's here, does it feel a little more routine for you, or is it still kind of that process with this group?
I feel like from a personnel standpoint, I feel much closer to the people, the young people in the program. I feel like I'm really getting to know them, and I'm enjoying that process. And through the rigors of the season, sometimes you get to know people more quickly. So you can get to know them as people and still learn so much about them as players as you go through. I've seen guys from June till now make vast improvements. And I've seen a couple of guys who are really good players who are going to be productive for us second guess themselves. And so trying to navigate all of those things and work to a point where everyone is playing without a bunch of self-doubt. That's the goal. We say a lot to play without hesitation, to know enough about what we're doing that you do it with aggression and assertiveness. And we haven't really reached that point yet. Those wheels are still turning. You just see it like it's not natural yet. You know, the chemistry that you want on the floor is behind the chemistry that we have off the floor. But because we're not disconnected off the floor, I believe that we'll get it.
Coach, what's it like to start a season, the nerves? Just talk about what's it like for you? Is this a fun time for you? Talk about this time of year to start a basketball
Yeah, it's exciting. It is. But I am getting old. And the older I get, the more important it is to me that I'm just around good people every day. You know, when you get to a certain age, like you don't hang with your boys from high school anymore. It's good to know them, but you really start to spend more time with people that you have something in common with. That's the kind of staff I want to hire. It's the kind of players I want to recruit. People that love the game, that are competitive, that have their priorities in line. And so I get more excited about that than the hoopla surrounding the start of a season. That's like, this is year 33, so I don't, you know, I'm glad there's no fucking Midnight Madness and all of that shit anymore. Like I'm not into that no more. That doesn't move me. What moves me is Zach Nuttall, and like wanting to see him do what he's capable of doing in his final year, and FAO Digi, like these people. I really want to be a part of their experience and have some memories together through the game. I think it's really cool. I get a chance to coach my son. I get to coach all of these guys that for some reason or another, it didn't work out at their previous place. Or while they were here, they didn't have a big role. And I get an opportunity to be a part of them taking the next step as a player. So I do get excited about that part of it, but all the other stuff, I'm over.
We'll be back for you.